I am honored to be introducing Kathy Westphal. Kathy is the Vice President for Head of Product Development for Zurich in North America. She just celebrated her 18th year anniversary. She's responsible for driving new and updated insurance products to the marketplace for customers and managing product health. Kathy has over 25 years experience in insurance industry with expertise in underwriting, operations, project management, and transformational technology initiatives. Presently, Kathy serves as our chapter chair for the Executive Council and has been an active member of the Chicagoland chapter since 2002. As the chair, Kathy moderates many of our executive panel discussions, and she has a great lineup of panelists tonight that will sure to inspire you. Kathy, please take it away.
Thank you, Yura. I'm going to try and share my screen. Can you see my screen in presentation mode?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Yura, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to the Hope Chicago team. What a great project that you've worked on. Very inspirational and well thought out project. So good luck to you and congratulations for such a great project. So tonight I have the honor of hosting and moderating the executive panel discussion. And our topic today is 2021 and beyond, predictions in the future of project management. So Yura did such a good job already giving me an introduction. Thank you, Yura. I won't spend much more time on this, but I do want to point out that this is my COVID hair that you see right now. You see pre-COVID hair in my write-up here. But as Yura mentioned, I've been with Zurich Insurance for about 18 years, heavily involved in underwriting and in operations and transformational projects. And right now, I am the head of our product development area. And I've been involved with the PMI for many, many years. It's such a great organization, and I'm proud to be here with you today. I'd like to turn it over to the panelists that we have attending with us today to introduce themselves. So Hugh, can you take it away?
Sorry, technical issue there. One of the things that we're going to be doing is taking questions and answers. And we look forward to having them submitted through the Q&A portal. I will gather them, and then at the end of the presentations, we'll go through and ask the panelists the various questions. Please don't hesitate to submit your questions during the panel discussion, and I'll gather them and consolidate them toward the end. Kathy?
Thanks, Hugh. I'm going to turn it over to George. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure. This is George Wang. I'm currently the Chief Marketing Officer over at Peterson Technology Partners. Been in industry for about 30 years, started my career as a software engineer for that tiny little company called Motorola. Had a chance to work on the world's first digital cell phone, and from there, spent time in a number of different industries, but primarily within healthcare and education, where I was honored to have an opportunity to serve as the Chief Information Officer for the state of Illinois, overseeing all our education agencies. I'm really excited to be here and share some of my thoughts along with my colleagues on the future of project management.
Thanks, George. Brian, can I turn it over to you now?
Sure. By the way, Kathy, your slides are not advancing. They're still on the first slide, the title slide.
Oh, no wonder. Let me try this one more time. Thank you for letting me know that. I thought everything was going according to plan.
Yeah, it doesn't like when PowerPoint's in presentation mode for some reason, so.
Okay, so am I advancing now, Brian?
Yes, now you have. There you go, one more.
No wonder Hugh was surprised when I handed it off to him.
So hi, everybody. I am Brian Kemper, and I've had the pleasure of being on the Executive Council for the last 4 years. For my current role, I'm a consultant leading a large M&A integration project for AbbVie. Prior to that, spent several years at HCSC, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield, and was the lead of a organization focused on improving delivery outcomes. The delivery assurance function addressed the most complex programs, as well as trying to uplift project management capability. And prior to that role, had several project management roles and PMO leadership roles at Blue Cross, as well as at Hospira and other companies.
Great. And Laszlo, can you introduce yourself as well?
Hi, thank you. My name is Laszlo Gonk. I have been involved in IT, cybersecurity since they called it good programming practices 30 years ago, and involved in project management. I started my first software company at the age of 12. I started my second company at 18, and I've been involved in consulting or working for, if you could advance the slide, please. 20 different types of industries, including government agencies, retail, hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing. A few years ago, I launched another consulting company after being a CIO, a CTO, and a CISO that focuses on risk management, both in the area of cybersecurity risk and digital transformation risk. I've been a prior chair of the Executive Council. I work here with a wonderful group of people, and Kathy is doing an amazing job leading us into the future. So I'm honored to be here to be able to share what the future looks like, or at least what we think it looks like.
Yes. Thank you, Laszlo. I'm on slide 7. Do you all see slide 7 right now, which is Deepak?
No, no. We are seeing Brian's slide, so you may want to advance to 2 slides.
Yes, I have.
So if you want to go to my slide, hover 2 seconds and then go to Deepak.
I already have done that, so I seem to be having some difficulty. I'll try to stop sharing again. And
Yeah, I think you have to get out of slide mode or slide presentation mode.
out of presentation mode, is that my problem? Okay. And I think,
something, yeah, it's something to do with your display configuration, but
okay.
it's
So
okay.
while Kathy is doing that, we made Mr. Savak a spotlight. So
Absolutely. Laszlo, did you have anything else you want to add, or I can keep rolling?
Deepak, all yours.
All right. Well, first off, happy Veterans Day to all. Obviously a great time to celebrate those in service and those that have retired, protecting our lives and safety of over 300 million people who represent kind of the states. I'm really excited to be here and share with the group. To give a quick context to me, Deepak Savak, I've had a very humbling career with many different roles, from writing public policy in the U.S. Congress to management consulting to industry roles in IT and business operations and product. I currently lead a divisional PMO at Discover Financial Services, if you think of the more commonly known name as a Discover Card. So I lead the PMO for the payment services line of business. My role is leading the process and governance and flow of business ideas through market launch, including the technical agile delivery, leveraging scaled agile best practices. Some of the things I always like to share in context as well is part of the way I lead. I think, it's super important to, get to know folks, especially on panels, in terms of even the way they lead. You'll see it reflected in the panel discussion today. But to give you some perspective, we all have an opportunity to change and improve in the way we work, the way we live, and the way we dream. Reflecting and optimizing, the 168 hours we have in a week on what's important in life is important to drive value at work, value at home, and then value in kind of wherever you want to go into the future. And that kind of bleeds into kind of the 2021 discussions that we'll have. On the personal side, my passion is spending time with my 3 boys, volunteering for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, JDRF. And, as part of the pandemic that folks have been at home, I even started biking about 30 to 50 miles every weekend. So it's been part of the fun of my life. With that, Kathy, I'll toss it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So to give you a little bit of background of what is the Executive Council, who are we? We have a vision and a mission that I'd like to share with you today. Our PMI Executive Council exists to promote the strategic and operational value of project management and advancing the profession in the C-suite. So our mission is really around providing senior level business leaders and project management executives with a thought forum to tackle different industry challenges, sharing project management trends and challenges throughout in effort to benefit the Executive Council members, the broader Chicagoland chapter, and the profession as a whole. We have 3 strategic initiatives focused on broad insight sharing, executive networking, and PM talent growth. So today, I'd like to just jump right into our questions here. You all know we're in the midst of a global pandemic. We've got some civil unrest. We've got political events going on. We've got hurricanes. So keeping all in mind, all of the different things going on in the world right now, how do these times affect today's business cases and value propositions for project management? Deepak, would you talk to us about this?
Absolutely. And Kathy, thanks for setting it up as if the world is going to end. I do really appreciate that. I think the real answer to this question, it's pretty practical. It's greatly. It's a yes to, the times are affecting the way we get work done. The combination of annual goals, financial planning, right, changes in market cycles impact how companies look at new investments, the growth rate or the growth rate of current investments. And if you just take a step back, even just as a PMO leader, project management is at the heart of aligning stakeholders across business sponsors, technical leaders, finance, HR, and legal to ensure the business case that's presented for work that folks want to do, that it's strong, that it holds water financially for the targets the company's trying to drive. And enables the growth that the company is seeking. In these times, we're seeking greater focus on impact to 5-year P&Ls. So, in some cases, I see that really shifting in 2021. The expense pressures of a business case in organizations look at their value targets and really getting focused on that. And much greater focus on the value the work can deliver. Project management is the heart of enabling all of that the company is planning to work on. What's most important, and deliver the value of the projected capabilities aligned in the business case. As Kathy set it up, right, we're truly in unprecedented times. And, it is on project management and kind of leaders in the space and at many different aspects. The leaders at the top and the boots on the ground kind of delivering the work to make sure we're driving the value that's intended as part of the business case.
Thanks, Deepak. George, anything that you'd like to add to that as well?
Got to unmute. After what Deepak said, I probably have nothing to say. No, that was an awesome response. I'll take it from a slightly different angle in the sense that when I read this question in terms of business cases and value propositions, specifically for project management, I work at a technology staffing firm. And so we see all kinds of businesses and industries, and we help place different kinds of folks in those companies. And so for me, we are seeing certain industries, as you can imagine, that are definitely affected by COVID, that are impacting what I call really a slowdown, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. So if anything, uncertainty in even projections around business cases and original targets of certain financial measures or certain growth targets are all being affected. And unfortunately, a lot of companies are putting pauses. In general, they're not abandoning things, but I think they're putting pauses and delaying things. And whether they'll reset them or they put them back as is, it's hard to say. But for me, project managers are important because they instill a certain amount of discipline toward these business cases, and also execution, because at the end of the day, it's around execution, right? And so I think that project managers will still be needed. I will say that in certain of our clients, they are potentially being impacted as well. I know it's not a good thing to hear, but I think that there will be a swing, right? There's always a swing where, okay, we might need to cut back on this, and then when things start picking up, we need them back. I think the ones that are thoughtful will find a way to utilize the project managers in some manner while we kind of wait through this whole pandemic, and hopefully that will resolve itself. So those are a little bit some tactical perspectives that I have on this situation at hand.
That's good, George. That's good, George. So now this question really kind of talked about now, the present time. I'd like to shift over into the future, which is the premise that we're surrounding today and kind of our theme of the event tonight. So Laszlo, I'm hoping you can help us think about the future and what project management is going to look like post-pandemic. And if you do have your crystal ball to think out to the next 5 to 10 years, we'd like to hear about that as well.
You're on mute, Laszlo.
Would help if I take myself off of mute. So I will prognosticate the best. Thank you, Kathy. Coronavirus has certainly impacted the world at an unprecedented level, and unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. However, we have some good news starting to come out, if you can say there's good news, in that we have vaccines that are starting to potentially come to the marketplace, that are, we've got election results that are working through. So to the point of the previous panelists saying there are pauses, that there's interesting times, at the end of the day, there will be good news. We've hit unprecedented pauses, speed bumps. Certain industries are going to be affected more than ever. But what we have to do in order to look at next year, 5 to 10 years from now, is look at human behavior. At the end of the day, technology will continue to change. Processes will continue to restart, improve, break down. We've seen breakdown in the global supply chain. But at the end of the day, what we need to plan for, and that's what we as project managers do really, really well, is plan for what the next normal looks like. What does it look like when we come out of this pandemic? In the meantime, how do we navigate? So the management theorist Henry Mintzberg came up with the 5 Ps: plan, ploy, pattern, position, and perspective. I read a great Harvard Business Review article a few weeks ago that proposes position, plan, perspective, projects, and preparedness. So when we look at the next normal, we as project managers have to look at our abilities to upscale our own skills. We're going to be leveraging everything we know and go put ourselves into continuous learning mode. So as we know, some workforces have to show up physically. Others, we're seeing organizations saying they're permanently going to use a remote workforce. I'm working with very large organizations that would never have hired out of state, but looking at what the future of that work looks like and being able to tap into additional skills, they are hiring remote workers, including from security, project management, web design has already been outsourced, but typically positions that you would see physically are now also be considered remote work. Local laws and regulations are going to heavily dictate response. We've seen travel and the lack of travel and how long that's going to, airlines are looking at possibly 3 to 5 years updating their volumes. But what's going to affect us at the future of work and this level is positioning. And these are the things you need to consider. I wrote some points down here for myself. What position can you attain during and after the pandemic? And this is from a strategic standpoint. What we see is project management is going to be aligning more with strategic management in organizations. What is your plan for bouncing back? What will your culture and identity change look like as a result of some organizations were not prepared to go to remote work? So culture got impacted. For some, it improved. Others, it fell apart because of lack of communication. And what new projects do you need to launch, run, and coordinate either now, a year from now, and how do you plan for changes in the marketplace? Because some industries are going to be incredibly affected by this. Others are actually thriving, especially some technology platforms. And then how are you prepared to execute these plans? So the changes that we see, the opportunities that we see, you're going to see a greater reliance on digital and remote teams across industries. You're going to see a closer connection, as I mentioned, between project and project strategy. There is no longer these projects with a begin and an end. You're going to see project management being integrated with change management in order to affect these things. You're going to see an incredible emergence of hybrid project management approaches. Whereas if you took, for example, just waterfall or just agile or just lean, you're going to see companies trying to build the ability to create resilience in the marketplace and being able to adopt a mixture or the right strategy for the right time to deliver to market as quickly as possible. There's going to be an incredibly more hard emphasis on soft skills, the ability to communicate, the ability to lead teams remotely, and that passion to go chase it. And then lastly, there's another question, I won't go deep into it, but the impact of artificial intelligence and data analytics on your job as a project manager. It's not going to take away from your job. Don't look at it from that perspective. AI and data analytics, when we go into it, is going to look at how does it augment, how does it do the stuff that is mundane and things that you need to keep track of and leverage historical data so that you can work on the greater critical thought challenges. So that's my initial feedback on that.
Well, that gives us a lot to think about, Les. Thank you. Brian, do you have any thoughts around the topic as well?
Well, I think Laszlo covered quite a broad range of things there. I just will make a couple of points about the project manager's role because, you know, as Laszlo mentioned, there is going to be a continued utilization of remote teams, remote collaboration. You know, they'll be less common to have co-located teams. And so the art of leading large-scale remote project teams is going to be critical. And that's not going to end with the pandemic. Right now, it's a kind of fact of life. But even when the pandemic is over, people are recognizing that the ability to staff projects remotely with talent from all over the world, it's a competitive advantage in time to market, and that you can onboard the staff you need with the critical skills you need for your project much faster and more efficiently by tapping that larger talent pool of remote workers. So the challenge then becomes, you know, once you've got that team, how do you achieve a strong, you know, performance without the face-to-face interaction? So what are some things you have to do to compensate? And it really boils down to strong communication and organizational skills. So for example, you know, working remotely makes it harder for team members to understand how their role fits into the roles of the rest of the project team. It also makes it harder for them to, you know, especially if you're onboarding new people, to understand how decisions are made at that company, how performance is measured. So as the project leader, you need to work hard to communicate those things. You need to be proactive about building what you'd call cultural norms in your project team, and be mindful that those are the things that build a basis for trust. And that's really critical when you've got a complex transformational project that is going to require a high degree of autonomy and empowerment to the team members. You know, projects that are cookie cutter, that are, you know, just following a standard pattern, doing something that everyone's done before, that's not as big of a challenge. But the projects that really move the needle, that are complex transformational projects, you're going to need to really be proactive about the communications and the organization skills. And that includes, you know, making sure that the team members understand their role and they feel empowered to act independently. And with regard to roles, you know, a couple of the key things that always apply to project teams are even more important when you're dealing with remote teams, which is when you're dealing with people who you don't see in the office, it's harder to evaluate their performance. So it really pays to spend extra attention on defining roles very explicitly and defining skill requirements for those roles very, very explicitly. And, you know, being as thorough as possible in assessing the people you hire, even if you have to do it entirely over the phone without ever meeting in person. So, you know, get other people's input, get other team members' input. They can help you identify the right skill fits to make your team productive.
Oh, that was really insightful. Thanks, Brian. It made me think about some of the things that you mentioned where we've had to pivot. In this current environment, we've had to pivot pretty quickly. And that actually leads really well to our next question, which is around driving business agility and being able to be flexible and respond rapidly to the changing environment that we've got today. So Deepak, I'm hoping that you can talk to this next question. How can companies use strong product and project management to drive ideas to market?
Kathy, this is probably one of my favorite topics, and I think you know, Brian even said it well, and then you said it well. It is about pivoting and the business agility, right? If you think about you know, for the past several decades, right, the shift of lean in manufacturing and those practices being evolved in multiple other industries, and the shift of agile product delivery is converging into true business agility. The question I think that you asked is how can it you know, help support kind of where we're going? So let's talk about it. Companies that can leverage a strong product hierarchy or framework as the anchor of understanding the distinct product capabilities that they want to drive value for the company can really take things to the next level. By building a strong product structure, then it's a lot easier to build self-autonomous agile delivery teams for the product capabilities. So it's really rethinking and it's pivoting the way we deliver from a project management standpoint based on the products we're trying to take to the market. So to give a kind of a slightly different example, right? For teams that don't do work in a non-technical delivery, this is similar to building a good product lean ecosystem to launch a product, a non-technical product to the market. You know, leveraging strong project management principles of planning practices and value management practices, you're able to articulate the value of a product to a customer and then deliver those capabilities with the good project management of milestones and MVPs to that market delivery. In the end, right, companies need good product structures and project structures, which are the key ingredients to a good operating model. If we're able to have a good operating model to help the product lifecycle and strong planning and executing practices coexist, then we're able to get the ideas to the market with, I think, what are three kind of core pillars around speed, quality, and value. And so hopefully that kind of encompasses what I believe is a little bit of the how around good product structures, leveraging the good planning and value management practices that project management brings, and the discipline of taking ideas from point A to point Z to the marketplace.
Wow, a lot to think about there. Thanks, Deepak. Laszlo, in the prior question, you touched a little bit about driving ideas to market. Can you expand here, and how can companies use their strong product and project management to drive ideas to market?
Well, first of all, Deepak, thank you. You really laid that out well, and I'm going to have a little tough time competing with that. So, but if I can add additional context to that, just like digital transformation means different things to different people, we need to define what business agility means to our organization within the context of our culture. But there's things we can all agree on, is that business agility requires that everyone involved in delivering the solutions, whether it's business and technology leaders, development, operations, legal, marketing, finance, we're all using, and we probably said, use lean and agile processes to continually deliver the innovative and high quality products and services faster than the competition. And we have to pivot again. It's that paradigm shift, it's that mindset change, is looking at whatever organization we have. When you have on the cover of the Wall Street Journal and other large business magazines and periodicals saying that all companies of the future are going to be technology companies, what they mean is that, and I'll use Domino's Pizza as an example. When Domino's came out, they said they were the pizza delivery company. They didn't say they were a pizza company. So the framework and the mindset shift here is creating your organization as it goes through a transformation process, especially post-pandemic and coming out of it. How do you create a platform company? How does the back-end infrastructure serve as a launching platform for innovation? How do you put the right people, processes, and tools, being technology, letting people and process drive that? Because at the end of the day, you've heard the phrase, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We've got to step back from that. We've got to create the platform that enables that quick delivery. And there's 5 trademarks to an agile organization. And that's strategy, where the organization embodies the North Star. It recognizes the abundance of opportunities, and then it co-creates values with all the stakeholders. Then there's structure. So it creates a network of empowered teams. So when you're given clear responsibility and authority, people will be highly engaged, will take care of each other, and project management leaders will be great drivers of that. Keep in mind, that expanded role. Project managers will take on expanded roles in the companies of the future that have established PMOs to be able to integrate. And as part of each project, you will be given the opportunity and you will have to deliver change management as part of the project delivery process, which then feeds into process. It's the rapid decision and learning cycles that you go through. And then, of course, people. It's building that dynamic model of leveraging the resources that ignites the passion across the product delivery, the innovation cycle. And then lastly, the technology. As we're introducing new technologies and building the service delivery model, project managers are going to need to step up and be able to deliver the change management for organizations that align the project with the strategy of the organization. And that requires us to upgrade our skill set to the how of being able to not just do project management, but program and portfolio management as well.
Great, great. So you talk about people, process, and technology, and that actually leads into our next question. So Laszlo, as long as you have the floor, I'm going to ask you to continue and address this question. What's different about managing projects that focus on artificial intelligence and data-driven technology? You touched upon this a little bit earlier. Can you give us a little more on this?
Well, so one impact of artificial intelligence will likely be the automation of many of the administration-focused tasks that are currently falling to project managers. And that includes resource allocation, project balancing, scheduling, budget updates, among others. We see emerging in automotive, aerospace, healthcare, financial industries, and others where machine learning or AI, AI to me is different than machine learning, but I won't go into the nuances here. But at the end of the day, the marketplace calls it AI. But there are a few other sectors that are beginning to leverage this. And you see some of it, it's not the same, but using robotics process automation, which can lead to additional gathering of information. But at the end of the day, how we leverage that as project managers, well, there's 2 complex tasks that are going to be performed: risk management and project estimation. And we as project management leaders need to embrace it, where, for example, in the area of risk management, a risk register is typically built by the team that has experience or tribal knowledge within the organization. But what if a smart machine learning, we could synthesize 2 years worth of risk and issue logs to assign an index rating based upon sophisticated algorithms or leveraging historical data? That's one area where AI is going to make a really big impact, so that we as project leaders can be able to use data at a depth we haven't been able to do before, because it is consuming. So machine learning and AI is going to take some of those foundational tasks for us, so that our level, our ability to handle projects is going to be at a higher and deeper level. And then project estimation, same thing. So many project managers leverage something called organizational process asset. You can see I'm getting really excited about AI. And so you've got repositories of historical business information that has past project duration and cost and progress. And many times, these top-down estimates is done in haste or fast-tracked, bottoms-up estimates. But what if you could take a robot and look at 3 years worth of historical information and project the organization, leverage productivity rates, attrition, holiday time, so that we can build that in to our projects, our programs, our portfolios?
Oh, I'm ready for all of that right now. George, as a former CIO, I think you probably have some thoughts around this topic as well.
Yeah, Laszlo, excellent thoughts. I mean, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data, there's so much excitement here. I'm going to take a look at this from a kind of a practical perspective. So when I read this question is, what's different about managing projects that are focused in these two areas? When I think of successful project management, it's very much focused on successful outcomes, right? And execution, delivery. And for me, the very nature of artificial intelligence and data analytics, it's a kind of an esoteric concept. What I mean by this is, if you were to explain to a regular person what it is, they may not understand what it is. So by that very nature, I think defining what the outcome is of these kinds of projects is very important, because I think that without knowing the nature of artificial intelligence, like what is that? Is it natural intelligence? Is it artificial? Is it fake? And so even the very definition of what this is and what it's going to achieve is very important. Now, some of these data scientists and really smart PhD folks, they may know what it is that it's supposed to do, but can they also explain it in simpler terms that the average people or the average person can understand? So whatever project manager is working on these things, I think it's important to work with these people that are working on these very advanced concepts to distill down what is it that it's trying to achieve. What is the problem that it's trying to solve? Also, second, build in some time to analyze these results, because whatever outcome it produces in this black box, if you want to call it, the AI, people are going to probably question it, right? Because a lot of us are very intuitive. There may be a human element to things. They may want to see very tangible metrics. But I think AI and machine learning doesn't necessarily produce things in that tangible manner, right? There's mathematics and all that. So the bottom line is, somehow these esoteric terms have to be defined in much simpler terms. Maybe there's smaller chunks of output that is measured and validated, and you have to basically build enough time to validate this, versus like, here's the results. Trust me, they're good, because there's a supercomputer cranking through these things, and surely they must be right. So that's kind of my practical thought about this. And I'm not a data scientist, but I know that people in general struggle with what these things are supposed to achieve. But I know Laszlo will tell me otherwise, that it's crystal clear what these things do, right?
I would like to follow up with George just a little bit. 2 minutes and I'll cut myself off. So I agree and I disagree with you, George, both at the same time.
Always.
I agree that we need to make it consumable, that we need to identify the outcomes. It is really critical. At the end of the day, it's either a toy or a tool, or it's a waste of money. So we need to identify what outcomes are we trying to achieve. We are seeing in specific industry sectors already specific actionable outcomes. We are also seeing in other industries where this, and so I'm going to focus on machine learning and not AI. Machine learning is the consumption and processing of mass data that we normally, as humans, would take 100 or 1,000 years to process. We see machine learning being used in healthcare, where normally you have consultations with patients reading the CT scans or the x-rays, and you're seeing high rates through continual learning and testing and feeding of garbage in, garbage out. You've got to put high quality data. So at the end of the day, we've learned our lessons from basically analytics 1.0. We're at the level of data analytics 2.0, and understanding that we have to feed better quality of data into the machine learning algorithms, but to make it consumable, and I'll end with that, is we look at how does it do the mundane task. And we're not looking for these things to make decisions right now because we want to prove that out, although they can. But right now, what we're looking for that is that vast number crunching that we would do manually is now done by machine learning. And then we see AI is at the next level, and this is where the future comes, is that it then posits different types of alternatives and decisions to make, which we, at the end of the day, as humans, still have control over. So we look at it as a sophisticated hammer, a sophisticated wrench. It's not going to take over. What it is it embedding a tool that processes data a lot faster than we can. So I hope that helps.
No, Laszlo, I concur with that. One of the things that's amazing about the evolution of Moore's law and basic computing cycles is basically where we're at is things that might have taken, I don't know, 100 years can be solved perhaps in minutes. And that is amazing because I was hearing the CEO of NVIDIA, who makes GPUs, right? Graphic processors, which are sometimes even stronger than CPUs, right? Your central processing unit. Basically what they're doing is they're saying they're like kind of like time machines. It was an interesting thought. It's like our vision is to allow GPU technology to almost be a time machine. What I mean by that is we are allowing scientists and healthcare professionals to solve problems that might have taken 100 years to solve in a matter of minutes or hours or something of that sort. And that is amazing, right? To be able to do that without waiting, 100 years in the future. Now,
and George, yeah. I'll say, what you're seeing in the vaccine technologies that are being released, it was heavily leveraging machine learning. I was involved in a similar type of project in the healthcare space a couple of years ago, and I can tell you, your point on what would have taken hundreds of years to process, we processed, and I was responsible for the cybersecurity protection around the machine learning that was writing machine learning. And again, we need to use it as a tool in the scope of what we define it to do. So you can see, thankfully, from the pandemic perspective, a lot of that machine learning being utilized that is delivering product to market.
Okay, thank you both. I think we're going to shift now from the technology more to the people side. When we talked about people, technology, and processes, let's talk about the people side now. This question is going to go to, let's start with George to start with. What new skills should project managers hone to prepare for the future? So more on the human side now.
Absolutely. And, even being a technologist for many years, it really is about the people. So what I love doing at Peterson Technology Partners is we help great companies find great talent, and it all stems with the people. Now, some of the skills that we are seeing that are very valuable is, Brian mentioned it and others earlier, is how to work in a remote environment. I think we're interviewing candidates all day long through video conferencing technologies. And it's very interesting the number of people that are not prepared to interview through video conferencing. And some of them are very simple, kind of basic things. But I think utilizing tools like this and making sure that you're aware of certain nuances I've been in interviews where cats and dogs are in the background. A cat leaps onto the person's shoulder. I mean, just silly things like that that happen, which we have to be aware of. But at the end of the day, like Brian said, is imagine people being onboarded into a new company completely remote. Now, it's interesting, right? Because one of the things as human beings is we are social creatures, and it's kind of nice to be able to shake a hand or meet your fellow peers on day one in person. Well, what can you do now? Well, it's probably video Hollywood squares, like kind of like we're seeing right now. And how well does that work for everybody? I don't know. I think depending on your generation or whether you're a digital native or something else, it could be very difficult. I think the other thing that also I want to emphasize that Brian mentioned is clarity of roles. You know how it is. If you have a manager that doesn't define a role very well, right? A lot of times you kind of morph into the role. What I mean is you go in there, you kind of work with your teammates and your peers, and you kind of figure out how things work by working with people around you, proximity. You're able to kind of ask a question, whatever. Not that you can't ask those questions through messaging services or email, but there's a certain human dynamic that is much more prevalent, I think, in person when you work close together that helps you define your new role, right? And that, I think, will be very interesting in this kind of remote world because it kind of puts the onus on your manager and your leader to really define it, number one. Number two, and help you make sure you understand what your role is. And that teammates are more in tune with this new person, that they might need a little bit of extra help, right? And that there's some kind of mechanism or some kind of technology platform that allows this to happen. The other thing is, I think, in this remote world is there's times when things are done well in groups like this. And then there's always the thing I call one-on-one time, right? It's still important to remember to be able to communicate in a one-on-one manner, whether it's through a phone call or a one-to-one video chat. And so those are some things around remote aspects of project management. The last 2 or 3 things, if I may say, is I've held both business roles and technology roles, and I think it's really, really important for people to develop skills beyond their core degree or discipline. I think the more people can develop skills in both technology, finance, marketing, technology, you're going to be a lot better project manager because of your domain knowledge, right? And then last but not least, I think somebody sent a chat message over here, is we don't want to become task managers, right? Become a project administrator or something of that sort. I think the more you know about your domain knowledge and expertise, the more value you can add to project management. And then you're not just going through a task list, right? You are presenting with maybe, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Did you know that if you do this or you don't do this, it might impact the project timeline? And by the way, our resources, it's a little bit strapped. You know, we might need more or we might need less. And they're going to go, why? Well, because from this business perspective, we have to account for X, Y, and Z. So the more you can build knowledge in other areas than your core knowledge, I think that's going to be really important.
Okay, thanks, George. We're getting, I'm doing a time check here. It's about 7:13. Want to make sure we get through the last question and still have time for Q&A. So before we go to the last question, Deepak, can you add anything to this particular question about new skills that project managers should hone?
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it super quick based on time. I would say as you think about the next several years, especially a post-pandemic type of era, there's 2 things I think that are super important. There's having the skill around humble inquiry and the second skill around financial storytelling. And to me, humble inquiry is the art of asking questions with empathy that drives and challenges a team, especially in working in a remote environment Being able to articulate questions or share ideas to challenge the status quo, or if something isn't clear, with positive intent and good character, really driving a focus on the outcome and intent that's there. So I'll leave it at that. I think hopefully George said a lot of great things, and I hope folks heard it, because a lot of this is about creating a new sense of culture in a remote environment.
That's right. Thanks, Deepak. The last official question that we have is about Agile. And how have you, Brian, we'll start with you. Brian, how have you used Agile during these challenging times, and how can it be transforming?
Well, thanks, Kathy. I mean, I have been engaged in quite a few Agile programs, very large-scale programs during my time at HCSC. And I have no doubt that it can be very transforming, not only to the organization, but the role of the project manager. Now, people have different opinions on how Agile has transformed the PM role. And part of that's because there's different versions of Agile, and Agile's not implemented the same way at every company. But I do think that Agile has transformed the role of the project manager, and particularly Agile principles can be applied to several of the things that people do in running a project. So just thinking about team dynamics, right? Focusing on getting the right talent and then creating high levels of engagement on the project team, that has become, I think, much more central than it has in the past, and it's directly related to Agile principles around people and interactions. As opposed to relying on process and tools. Another principle that I see being really valuable is the emphasis on creating early prototypes, mock-ups, working versions of software, and gathering feedback directly from your clients and customers, which is clearly tied to getting working products over detailed documentation. Don't rely on static requirement documents, create the prototypes, mock-ups, early releases, and get that feedback. And I think PMs need to plan and structure their projects to do these things. And, overall, just as the PM role has historically been very focused on planning, the idea of iterative planning, continuously gathering more feedback and input to clarify the objectives of the project and the requirements for the solution is a very valuable application of Agile concepts of adapting to change versus following a plan. So the traditional waterfall approach of comprehensive planning up front, is much more effective if you can do this in an iterative way through the life cycle of the project and adapting as you learn over time. And that does not mean that Agile projects run without project plans, which is one extreme. But we have to remember as PMs that the end goal is not creating the plan and then executing. Planning is an iterative process throughout the life cycle of the project.
That's true.
And so,
That's true.
in other things related to the PM role, I mean, the idea that certain projects won't have a project manager is very common in some shops that run Agile. But I think that big transformational initiatives that drive the realization of business outcomes, that implement strategic changes to the company, these are inherently large and complex and are going to require strong project management capabilities. Gartner just saw one of their presentations where they highlighted the 5 critical capabilities needed for transformation, and project management is at the top of that list. So I feel that's going to continue to be the case, and feel like there's recognition that that's where the PM can really continue to show value.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Deepak, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, maybe to round it out, I think of the last one here on the panel piece. I think Brian said it really well, right? If you think about Agile as a mindset and a framework for thinking, sharing, planning, and delivering outcomes, at Discover, we use Agile-based technical delivery, product delivery on a regular basis, from everything including discipline Agile, right? I think you heard it kind of early on, in the session today about the value and the kind of the certifications and things that people could leverage. We also leverage Scaled Agile framework that leverages Scrum and Kanban in a methodical way to deliver kind of larger product capabilities. And we're also introducing more Scrum at scale concepts. So how is it transforming, or kind of what are we doing? If you think about concepts like inspect and adapt, of looking at how the process you went through to create something and doing the inspection and adapt against it, we've been finding creative ways and being innovative in leveraging live surveys, leveraging games like Kahoot to drive a positive team-based culture and have really thoughtful collaborative sessions around it. And I would say the transformation is really getting grounded on lean-based methodologies around and leveraging operational excellence to drive process improvements, technical improvements, but truly rounding out the foundational metrics on speed, quality, and value. Really getting grounded on those things can be transformational to drive the continuous improvement journey moving forward. And at Discover, we really truly hang our hat on the customer experience. It's in our blood, right? The better clarity and value we can provide to our customers is really what we hang our hat on. And it's why we come into work every day. And that's the transformation. If we're grounded on that and grounded on the outcome we want is a good customer experience, then all the other things can really work well in delivering smaller features. Really getting grounded on those metrics to make the features smaller, because then you can deliver faster and speed to market quicker. So with that, Kathy, I'll toss it back to you. I know we're hitting the time clock here.
That's really insightful, so thank you. I do want to open it up to questions and answers. So Hugh, I think you are on deck to be able to facilitate those.
Yes, welcome. Look forward to these really good questions. And as a matter of fact, the first one comes from Ellen Sajdak. Hey, Ellen, how you doing? And she says that there's this actually relates to one of the first questions that we had about culture. And she goes, there's a mention of culture being affected by this pandemic. Are there any thoughts or recommendations as to how to ensure our PMO teams continue to keep culture top of mind? This is especially important as we try to start onboard new team members remotely.
It's George. Can I speak to that just briefly? Culture is sometimes a mysterious word, but it is really the behavioral norms, right, of the organization. And I think that culture, it really should be clearly specified by your leaders, right? And I know sometimes there's even subcultures within large organizations, but I think that it's funny, but it starts from the very beginning, which is recruitment, right? When you are recruiting folks into your organization, I think finding the right people from the get-go of having the right skills, but also the right cultural match is so key. And that's one of the things we at Peterson Technology Partners really focus on. So one thing that could be key, Ellen, is making sure that your recruiting team and the hiring managers think about that as they bring in new candidates.
Any other presenters want to comment on that?
Yeah, this is Deepak. Maybe I can share kind of one example. If you think about one of the kind of core cultures at Discover is relationships, fostering, really great relationships throughout the company. Well, being in a pandemic and working remotely, it's hard to keep that rolling, right? Keeping the communication flow going, keeping that part of the culture alive. So to me, it's establishing what are your using good project manager principles. How do you provide more rigor to enabling the culture that you want? So, for me, I have now weekly leadership team meetings with my directs and my directs to share some information. I now have a monthly meeting with my entire organization, which is a little less than 100 people, to just share information. We also, at all of our Agile ceremonies, we try and make it a little bit lighter and make it a little bit fun as part of the intros in the middle, adding music during our events over remote, and people commenting on that music. So again, it's all about the culture you want to create, the culture you want, and trying to figure out the opportunities to instill that in the remote environment.
And I'll just add to that, the common theme is communication. It's think about the way you used to communicate, the walk, the walk down the hall, the water cooler, the coffee room, walking into somebody's office. For a lot of us, that's gone. How do we replicate those same communication channels, both upstream and downstream?
These are tough questions. Happy you guys are answering them. We have two similar questions related coming from frankly, two Cornell civil engineers. So I'll start with Steve Svall, but Dr. Kodakula also had one. Steve mentions that he's seen a number of recent past PM contracting forms are looking for people who are really project administrators more than PMs. He's referring to meeting schedulers, note takers, slide builders. But how do we elevate the role to a project leader with real clout and authority?
I'll jump in. I think it's all about you know, like anything. You don't use your car to mow your grass. You use a lawnmower. To me, it's the right role for the right job. So, you know, what is the right roles that are needed to complete the activities that need to be performed? So sometimes companies, including my own, including my team, right? We do have project administrators, but it's because the task that's needed to drive the momentum of a project, of a large program, sometimes needs that role. So to me, it just depends.
Yeah, and I think,
we've heard. Go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just going to say, I think if you're talking about contract roles in particular, I think you want to try early in the process to diagnose, you know, what is the expectations for leadership in this role and what are the expectations in terms of autonomy and decision authority. And there's little that you can do from outside the company to try and influence the way that that company thinks about the role of PMs. But I would say, you know, part of the interview process is your opportunity to showcase from your past experience how you've been able as a project leader to really impact business outcomes, how to make sure that the expectations of leaders in the company were achieved with the ability to communicate, to plan, and to, you know, make sure that there's focus on, you know, execution against a set of outcomes. So it's part of, I guess, the salesmanship of being in an interview to try and make sure that you're perceived as a project leader, whether that is the type of role that they're trying to fill or not.
Prasad follows that up with a similar.
And I would just add, if I may, Hugh,
Sure.
at the end of the day, it's hard to come in as an architect if you're thought of as the lawnmower guy. And Brian, you nailed it perfectly too. And Deepak, are you internal to the organization? Are you a full-time employee? Are you part of the team? Or are you coming in as a third party or a contractor? There's separate dynamics for that. And for the contractor, to Brian's point, you need to come in as the architect who happens to be able to fulfill a number of roles and achieve. But at the end of the day, how do you align what you're doing with the strategy of the organization? And you need to, whether you're internal or external, you need to pivot that conversation to have more strategic leadership on how you approach it. You still need to demonstrate your tactical abilities to execute. And then how do you deliver out those outcomes that, you know, put yourself outside that role. If you want a leadership role, project thought leadership, saying that the projects, even this one contract project, aligns with the strategic goals of the organization to provide these outcomes, to reduce risk, to improve delivery, to improve customer experience.
In a related question that Prasad Kodakula asks, is how are PMI's credentials recognized in your organizations and industries? And how does that relate to just our immediate discussion about being a leader?
Here, I'm happy to answer. This is Deepak. I think, you know, when I look at roles in the organization, depending upon the type of role, when I look for business program managers in particular to drive, right, these kind of product and go-to-market transformations, I look for people with PMI credentials. And the reasons why, right, there's discipline, there's rigor, there's an understanding of the fundamentals of practices and principles to drive a project. And to me, that's the heart of it. When I look at Agile-based delivery types of roles, I look at similar types of having the balance of project management to PMP certifications with different types of Agile-based certifications depending upon the work that's there. So to me, it's a lot about, you know, the right tool for the right project. Making sure the certifications map up to what we're trying to drive.
Right tool for the right certifications and then for the right people. Larry Spear asks, can the, just flipped out of my screen here. Somebody wrote an answer. Hold on a second, I'll get to it. There it is, Larry. Can the Agile coach and project manager coexist on a project? How do they split the roles? And are they two different people, or would you recommend one person playing both roles?
Well, you know, I can offer a perspective on that. And I think the answer to the first question is it depends. There are different types of projects that are often very well addressed through an Agile coach, a Scrum Master. The degree of reliance on a project manager and the project manager role really depends on how the organization views that project. In other words, if it is tied to a business case, if it is tied to specific outcomes that are going to be important at the enterprise level, that have a high degree of visibility, that requires reporting, that requires some pretty rigorous measurement of status and value of business outcomes, there are no doubt that a project manager should be applied to that project. And so it really kind of goes back to company culture, company expectations. There are a lot of companies that look at their development teams, particularly if they're software heavy, and they look at their projects as just executing against a roadmap that's been predefined with a bunch of extensions to existing platforms and products. And they're not necessarily as concerned in measuring the types of things that project managers are responsible for. And so it really, you know, depends on the type of a project, but the Scrum Master and project manager roles can coexist depending on what the expectations of the company are. Agile coaches I've actually found to be more common during the transformation phase of an organization adopting Agile, and less of a alternative to a project manager than the Scrum Master role.
Yeah, this is George. I typed in a response. And so, yeah, let me build on what Brian said is, to me, an Agile coach is toward the beginning where they perhaps recognize they want to go to Agile and people don't know what Agile is exactly. So it's very much a person that's training a process, guiding a process to ultimately achieve effectiveness, because there's some belief that Agile is the right process or the right way to drive effective delivery. So I see that person as being more of a coach and whatnot. There can be potentially overlap with the project manager. I think I made a comment, not to offend anybody, but they may have less of a vested interest in the project delivery and outcome, which definitely typically the PM is held accountable and responsible for delivery. But if you think about it, the Agile coach is helping get better delivery outcome through the proper use of Agile. So in the end, they're both trying to deliver better outcomes, I think.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Unfortunately, we're out of time for questions. We still have, you know, good questions coming in from Tim Sheridan, from Sunil Shinani. But what can I say? Time to pass it over to Veronica. It's past 7:30. So Veronica, take it away.
All right. Hopefully everybody can see that I'm sharing my screen, hopefully. I'm too scared, but I'll try it anyway to see if The same thing happens when I put my screen on the total slide versus just letting it show from this window. But I wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody for participating this evening, all the guests, PMI guests, all of the guests from Black Diamond, all of the guests from the Executive Council. We want to just take this opportunity to thank you for your participation. And we will be presenting all of our panelists with a certificate of appreciation that will be personalized with each one of your names on it. And it will be suitable for framing. So I will make sure I email and get that out to all of our participant panelists this evening. And in addition to that, I wanted to put up this PDU slide again. I've seen a lot of questions come in about people wanting to be able to have the QR code stay up there a little bit longer so that they could get credit, even though it was announced earlier in the presentation before we got started. So for those of you who didn't have an opportunity, here it is on the screen again, so that you can basically take a snapshot of it and make sure that you get your credits in. Last but not least, the last meeting of the year, which will be on December 9th, our program meeting will be from Mr. Andy Kaufman. He's a world-renowned speaker associated with PMI, and some of you probably have heard Andy speak in the past, but he's our closer for the year, and we're excited to have him, and he will be really the second bookend to tonight's topic. He will be covering how to prep your career and thrive in 21, which is going to really be exciting because it kind of drills into the personal expectations of every project manager so that you can see what you need to do in order to equip yourself for opportunities that may come your way next year. So registration is open tonight. So we just opened registration. So you could be one of the first to register for next month's event. And with that, I'll close and thank everybody for coming and participating, and hopefully to see everybody next month as we close out our year with programs in our monthly meeting calendar. So thank you, everybody. Make sure you wear your mask and make sure you wash your hands and make sure you stay safe.
Hey, Joe, have you stopped broadcast?